Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, we have spent way too much time geeking out about forced reset triggers and wide open triggers, especially as it relates to Operation Reticent Recall. But then come to find out, last week we learned that the Hellfire trigger system had also been put on that same hit list. That had many of you wondering, how exactly does a trigger end up drawing the ire of ATF? Well, I think I have an answer for you, as at least it relates to one particular system. So let's spend a few minutes today and talk about how the Hellfire trigger system got on ATF's most wanted list. Okay, so the issue we're talking about today is a follow-up to ATF now adding the Hellfire trigger system, specifically the Hellfire Stealth trigger system, to their most wanted list of triggers that they are currently out on a national scavenger hunt for. That now adds to the list the Hellfire trigger system, along as the forced reset trigger from Rare Breed and the wide open trigger from Big Daddy. Now, some people were asking, how the heck did the Hellfire trigger system all of a sudden end up on this list? And I want to thank our good friends at Firequest, who are not sponsoring this video, but they have been in communication with Washington Gun Law, and we do appreciate their willingness to help us out. But they probably gave us the exact reason why they ended up on the hit list, and it is this letter right here, written by many, many members of your United States Congress. Now, I will put in the description box down below everyone who signed this, and we can certainly figure out what political leanings they may have. But what I find most disturbing about this letter is the two factual examples that they use as to why this system should be, in fact, outlawed. And in addition to that, let us remember what's happening here. We have members of Congress, the government branch that's designed to actually pass and enact laws, asking the ATF, an executive branch agency, to go out and rewrite the laws for them. It's literally as if you have a branch of government conspiring to commit an act of violation of the separation of powers. Now, take a look at how this letter starts, and then I'm going to fast forward to something at the end of the letter, which kind of, I think, bookends the credibility of this claim. Dear Director Dettelbach, we write to express concern over the discovery that the Uvalde shooter purchased and attempted to use a Hellfire trigger device to carry out his deadly attack on Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas on May 24th, 2022, as first reported by the New York Times. That's right, always a bastion of honesty and truthfulness. This is, of course, reported by the New York Times. It must be the gospel. Well, when we fast forward towards the tail end of the letter, there is another sentence that I think also puts this into proper context. Why the Uvalde shooter purchased a Hellfire trigger device. He was not able to use it. So we start off this letter right away saying, hey, this madman used this device to slaughter children at Robb Elementary School, and I think we can all agree what a horrific tragedy that was. But then in a mere passing towards the end of the letter, it was, oh, and by the way, he didn't actually use that device. But that's not the only time that these respected members of Congress misled the ATF. Take a look at what Congress is saying here and pay attention to the last couple sentences of this. In the past, Hellfire trigger devices gained notoriety for their ability to dramatically increase a semi-automatic weapon's rate of fire. Installed on a weapon's trigger guard, the original accessories push the trigger forward again after the initial shot, thus allowing for a lightning-fast subsequent shots. It appears that such devices were approved by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives in a 1990 letter, even though the devices clearly violate the law. So yes, that is correct. ATF has previously approved these devices, and Congress is now claiming that, well, that approval, the agency that we tasked with making all these determinations, was wrong, and now we need it to change. Now, of course, Congress could pass more comprehensive laws, I suppose, that would define perhaps rate of fire, but that's not how it works at the federal level. Instead, we need to sick this executive administrative agency onto people like some out-of-control attack dog. Now, the letter further states, and I want you to pay attention to this, the consequences of that mistaken decision have been deadly. One device was used to deadly effect in the 101 California Street shooting in July 1993. Notice how there is no footnote attached to that one. And David Koresh of the Branch Davidians, quote, told law enforcement authorities that he had used Hellfire triggers on semi-automatic weapons, leading to the Waco, Texas siege. Now, we don't have to be a total history buff to remember the horrible tragedy that was the Branch Davidian complex, which occurred in Waco, Texas. However, we can recall, if we do, that it was not about the Hellfire trigger system, nor was that ever implicated in any part of that siege. Now, Congress was quick to point out some of the rather vociferous marketing that occurred from Firequest and the Hellfire trigger system, which I candidly believe may have contributed to drawing attention to them, because, as Congress pointed out, today a company called Firequest International sells newer designs that are just as deadly, including the Hellfire Stealth, which installs inside an AR-15's pistol grip and acts very much like the original Hellfire trigger devices of the 1990s. In describing the Hellfire Stealth, Firequest states on the product's webpage, this incredible new system installs invisibly within your pistol grip on an AR-15 style rifle and can be activated or deactivated in seconds. It legally allows you to pull your gun's trigger at up to 900 rounds per minute legally. And yeah, I'm not going to get too deep into it. I've had some private conversations with individuals about this, but those bold and brash claims undoubtedly led to some of the attention being drawn. Now, the letter further states, Firequest also offers the Hellfire Gen 2 for AR-15s, AK-47s, and similar weapons. This device wraps around a host weapon's pistol grip and operates like a bump stock, utilizing the rifle's recoil to continue firing. With the latter installed, the company states all you have to do is squeeze the trigger to shoot rates up to 900 rounds per minute, which is comparable to AR-15s with bump stocks that can fire between 450 and 900 rounds per minute. And the resource cited on that one is an article from The Trace. The letter further states, once again, Firequest also claims that the Hellfire Gen 2 is ATF legal and compliant and comes with its own certificate of legality. A video included on the product page shows the shooter firing a Hellfire-equipped AR-15 with substantially the same rate of fire as a fully automatic rifle. So we have two examples in this letter. We have the Uvalde shooter who apparently purchased one of these but was never able to use it. We have David Koresh, who apparently fiddled around with these things at one point but had nothing to do with the Branch Davidian siege. What else could they come up with? Well, check this out. After the October 2017 Las Vegas shooting, where a gunman used bump stock equipped AR-15s to kill 61 people and wound another 411, the ATF finalized a rule that went into effect in March 2019 and effectively banned bump stocks, quote, as such devices allow a shooter of a semi-automatic firearm to initiate a continuous firing cycle with a single pull of the trigger, end quote. This same logic should prohibit the Hellfire trigger as well. The final rule even mentions Hellfire triggers in responding to commenters, but declines to discuss their legality. And the site for that, of course, is the final rule on bump stock. So what they're saying is, hey, listen, there was a mass shooting that took place using an entirely different item, an entirely different piece of technology, an entirely different device. But for that reason, we should also ban the Hellfire trigger system. The letter concluded to ATF with a list of very long and ominous demands, including the following. Has the ATF approved the Hellfire trigger devices marketed and sold by Firequest International and its affiliates? Was the ATF made aware of Firequest marketing practices? Has the ATF discovered any companies selling similar products? Can the ATF clarify its position on Hellfire triggers and similar modifications, such as auto-sears and binary triggers, which dramatically increase a weapon's rate of fire? Why does the ATF hold that a single function of a trigger only means a trigger pull and not the release, with the understanding that it is impossible to pull a trigger without releasing it at some point, even with binary triggers? And there were a list of other demands. Now, that led ATF to obviously put the Hellfire trigger system on its radar and eventually on the most wanted list where it sits right now. But I want you to pay careful attention to some of these questions I read, because you'll notice now that Congress is alluding to binary triggers. And why is that a big deal? Well, if we go back and we look at the letter on the forced reset and wide open triggers from March of this year, this letter right here, we will remember that the ATF specifically excluded binary triggers from that consideration. Now we have members of Congress saying, oh, no, you got it wrong. You need to go back and do this over. That, my friends, this letter, full of all of these allegations, is how the Hellfire trigger system got on ATF's most wanted list. Listen, you may have more questions about this or anything else related to your Second Amendment rights, and if you do, remember you can always contact us at WashingtonGunLaw.com, or of course you can call us directly at 425-765-0487. Now, let's remember, part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here at Washington Gun Law, is to know what the law is in every situation and how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching, and stay safe.